Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I hope you're enjoying this amazing series where we are tying the possibility between an Aramaic origin of the Quran to a number of examples that are found in the Arabic Quran itself by way of corrupting that original source language and adding to it or reinterpreting it. We've talked about a number of examples, for instance, from chapter 23 of the Quran, chapter 70 of the Quran, some of these mysterious letters. But today we are going to shed the light on the substance of the original, or the Proto-Quran, if you wish. What did the Proto-Quran talk about if we want to take it back to its original root or language? And with that in mind, we have here with us our dear friend, Dr. Jay Smith, who will help us unpack this question. Dr. Jay, welcome back.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones because we have been saying that we are sin sifters, S-I-N, Standard Islamic Narrative. We're putting the Standard Islamic Narrative into the sieve. So we're putting this book, the Quran, into the sieve. And we want to see as we start putting it through the sieve, what's going to come out below. What's going to come out? What is this? What do we find? Now, in this case, we're going backwards. We want to go and find out what the original one is. So we're putting it through the sieve. This is the Standard Islamic Narrative. And guess what we're finding? When we put it through the sieve, this is what we're finding. We're finding the Bible.
Interesting.
We're finding actually the original text. See, this is what it is today, but this all was introduced in the 8th and 9th century. In the 7th century, what this came from was this. This is what we would really like to get back to. And this is all about Allah. This is all about the prophets, but even every one of the stories of the prophets is completely ulta-pulta, all over the place, all mixed up. They have Abraham being thrown into the fiery pit, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They have all kinds of problems with Moses. They don't know who he is, what he did, where he went. Jesus is completely confused. There's reference after reference of denying his divinity, confusing him with Mary as part of the Trinity in chapter 5, verse 116, saying now three, their God is one, and he has no son. That in chapter 4, verse 171. I mean, there's so much confusion about Jesus Christ in this book. And the reason why is because this has been bastardized from that. When you put it through the Aramaic sieve and you look at the original Aramaic of this, what do you get down here? You get Jesus.
Interesting.
Jesus is what you find down here. Everything's about Jesus. The hymns that they took through and made this from those hymns, those lectionaries, those homilies. Lectionaries are recitation, homilies are preaching. Hymns are singing praises. They're all singing praises to Jesus. They're homilies about Jesus. They are recitations about Jesus. Everything is about Jesus in the Aramaic. Taken out of the Aramaic, stripped of all its diacritics, reintroduced new diacritics in the 8th century, and that's what all this is all about. They start introducing all these diacritics in what we now, let's put it on the right side up. This is the bastardization that's gone on because they put the dots and the vowels in the wrong places and they recreated a completely new text that's nothing like that. And they stripped Jesus of his divinity. They stripped him of the Trinity. They stripped him of his sonship. And he becomes nothing more than a man that denies his divinity. And they add stories that have nothing to do with what Jesus actually did. He's a little boy making birds out of clay. And since when did Jesus make birds out of clay and blowing them and flying them in the air? Since when did he speak from the cradle? There's no reference of that here, but it is here. That's in chapter 3, verse 46. That's in chapter 3, verse 49. In chapter 19, the Jesus that is here, he's a little baby and he's telling his mother how to eat. Since when did Jesus tell Mary how to eat? Jesus never spoke from the cradle. And yet he's doing that here. These are Gnostic writings. These are Gnostic writings. They were introduced in the 4th century. The Jesus that is here becomes a bastardized Jesus. He no longer, he denies his divinity, gets confuses of himself about the Trinity, adds and assumes that Mary is part of the Trinity. And then most heinously, the Jesus that here that dies on the cross refuses to die and lets another man die in his place. This Jesus has been bastardized. I'm sorry, I have to use that word. This is not the Jesus I know. This is not the God I know. Because the God that I know down here, this God that's in this book, this God never deceives. This God never deceives. This God is full of deception. This God not only deceives, he's proud of it. And there you see him here. He takes the image of Jesus, puts it on another man's face. That Jesus does not die. That man who has nothing to do with it, he dies in Jesus' place. In this book, in chapter 4, verse 157. But this book, it is Jesus who dies. And it is Jesus who comes 3 days later and shows himself to the apostles who are there in the upper room. And it is this Jesus who then, not only when Thomas doubts him, shows him the holes in his hands and his feet. This Jesus never deceives. This Jesus is full of deception. Can you see what they have done to our Jesus?
Do you have an example that you want to share, or did you share any examples in your own channel when you unpack this?
Chapter 4, verse 157. There's an example right there. Look and see what he's done there. Chapter 5, verse 116. Look and see what look what they've done to the Trinity.
That's right.
Chapter 4, verse 171. Look and see what they've done to the sonship of Jesus, to his divinity, and also to the Trinity. Chapter 5, verse 72. He has no partner. Since when does Jesus have a partner? Right. God does no partners. So what's that doing in chapter 5, verse 72? And chapter 5, verse 75, which says that God cannot eat, but Jesus and Mary ate, therefore they cannot be God. Since when can God not eat? My God can eat anytime he wants. Are you saying that I can do something that maybe this God cannot eat, maybe Allah cannot eat, but I can certainly eat, and you can eat, which means we're greater than the God of the Quran. Even this Jesus here, this Isa, even that name makes no sense, because that's not even the Arabic name for Jesus. It's got the wrong name for Jesus. Yeshua is the Arabic name for Jesus. So where did Isa come from? Well, it comes from the Syriac again. It's the Iesu. The Iesu is the Aramaic name, which is the Syriac Jesus, who is the Gnostic Jesus. And no wonder they got the wrong man at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time in every case. And that's why I want nothing to do with this Jesus. I want nothing to do with this God. I want everything to do with Jesus. But see what we're doing. Now, do you see the ramifications of this? If this is the case, what is this going to do now to biblical studies? What is this going to do to Quranic studies? What is this going to do to Islamic studies around the world? Up till now, if you want to do Quranic studies, if you want to do studies on Islam, if you want to do studies on the Middle East, especially when you do the historical categories, you have to know Arabic. Everybody has to know Arabic, which you do.
Right.
But what's the first question that's always asked of us who have done, in my case, 40 years of studies? Do you know Arabic?
That's true. That's usually the common, refutation, if you wish.
This book doesn't come from Arabic. This book comes from Aramaic. From here on out, because of what Luxembourg has done, because of what Gunther Lulling has done, but because of what Gerbel Sama has done, Gerbel Sama has been telling us, we in the Aramaic world, we have been trying to tell you for years, and none of you have listened to us. If you want to know where this book comes from, if you want to know where all of this comes from, you need to go back to the Aramaic. Which means we're going to have to retool everything. All of our seminaries, all our Bible schools, all of our studies on the Quran are going to have to now retool and reform and go back to the original text. You always go back to the original text. That's called textual criticism. You always go to that which it is derived from. That's what everyone's going to have to do, which means we're all going to have to learn Aramaic now for those who really want to study this book, to understand what this book is, to understand where this came from, to understand the Quran. Isn't that what we started this series out with?
Right.
The archetype. We need to go to the Proto-Quran. And the Proto-Quran is all in Aramaic. And when you go back to that Quran, what do you think you're going to find? You're going to find Jesus all through it. Amen. And what have we been saying for 40 years? I want to bring Muslims home. What better way to bring them home is to bring them back to that real Jesus, the original Jesus, the Jesus that this book was all written about but got bastardized along the way. Take it and rip it out of the Arabic and put it back into the Aramaic. And when you put it back into the Aramaic, you're going to find the Jesus you and I have known for, well, in our case, my case, for centuries. In your case, just in just this lifetime. But isn't that amazing, Jesus? And isn't that the Jesus we want to introduce anyways? And isn't that exactly what we want to do? We want to bring them home. Let's bring them home.
Amen.
Away from the Quran, back to the Bible.
Amen. And you've been saying this yourself for years, and what a coincidence. Now we know that we want really to bring him home indeed. Thank you, brother, as always. Next time, we will visit another topic related to this series. I think we are going to talk about why the use of the Arabic.
Now you can understand why there's so many reference after reference about the Arabic Quran for the Arabic people in the Arab. You wouldn't have to know that. You wouldn't even have to say that unless there was something that is in contradistinction to that.
That's true. That's true. Excellent point. And again, hopefully everybody's been enjoying this series. Until we meet again next time in another exciting topic, God bless you.